Alright, thanks very much for talking to me. What's your name?
John.
John, I'm Dale.
Nice to meet you, Dale. Liz.
Liz, how's it going?
Not bad.
I ask people questions about the world. What do you think of what's going on in the world right now? Do you think about it much?
Not necessarily. I think you just basically think of your own predicament at the moment, innit?
Aye.
Everybody's sort of struggling, isn't it?
I know.
So,
Everybody's struggling, isn't he? What do you think the cause of that is?
I don't know, but there seems to be something happening with, more than one country.
Aye.
Anyway.
Aye. Do you think there's a bigger picture to our situation about why it's all happening?
Obviously.
What do you think?
I'm not too sure, but
If I can kind of maybe lead the conversation, do you think there's an element of controlling us going on?
I think it's Europe-wide and
Worldwide?
yeah, especially Europe anyway.
Europe? Aye. What do you think they want to control us for?
I haven't got a clue, but there's some agenda, isn't there?
Of course there is.
Aye.
See, I've got my theories about what the possibilities are.
Right.
And I'll ask you the question. I mean, it just gets a bit deep here. What do you think life is? You ever thought about it?
Not particularly.
No. That's one of the things I always ask people, and it concerns me that human beings seem to be just following along, going along with whatever they're born into, and they never really stop to question what's actually happening here. And the main thing that I want to get to the topic of this is the question that we never actually ask where we are. Do you think it's important to know exactly where we are?
I'm not too sure.
If I says to you, right, there's a board game, right, and I gave you the board game, and I gave you whatever was involved in it, and I gave you no instructions, what would you do?
I'd play it.
Would you just make it up as you go along? Find a game and make it work for you?
Aye, definitely.
Right, but you wouldn't actually know what the real game was then, because you don't know what the board game is, you don't know what the rules are.
No.
So I'll ask you the same question then. What's the world? Where are we here?
I still don't know.
Still don't know.
No.
So that's the analogy I'm using. It's like
Yeah.
we're playing games,
Aye.
but the game is only rooted in anything objective, because we don't know where we are and we don't know why we're here.
No, a lot of people I think actually don't know what's happening. Like I say, and I've got thoughts on, there is something happening, and it's not just in the UK.
Yeah.
But
So if I was to suggest that there's control, there's definitely control, you'd 100% agree. I would suggest, like, I use an analogy, a farmer, right. Puts a fence around his cattle, simply to control them, so that he knows where they are at all times and they can't escape, right? See, with human beings, you can't do that to them. If you put a fence around human beings, they're going to be inquisitive, they're going to ask, why is the fence there? Where, what's going on here? And they would just seek to go and find out more. But what if they told you lived on a round ball, spinning in space? That's the very same thing, because there's nowhere you can go, and you think that's all there is. Right?
But I think, we're saying about, there's obviously something happening with it, but I don't think that the public will put up with it for much longer.
You think? Well, that's what I've been hoping for a long time. I want to just get back and lead you into my wee topic of the thing here. What would you do as a trade? Were you a tradesman or were you a career? No, what was your...
for Glasgow Housing.
I'm going to say something to you, right, and I want you to just tell me what it means to you. When I say water finds its own level, what does that mean to you?
Water finds its own level? I mean, I know what it means because I'm involved in that sort of...
So like the water behind us here, the surface here, how did you describe the surface?
Flat.
Flat? What if I made it 10 times the size? How would you describe the surface?
Flat.
20 times the size? Flat? What shape's the world?
Round.
How can it be round with straight water on it?
I don't know, it's something to do with how it's spinning and stuff, isn't it?
But that's the point, because people, that's your experience, and you think it's a round ball, but your experience tells you something different.
I think it's to do with how the world...
You don't know.
Spins.
But you don't know. That's the honesty. I'm looking for the honesty, because that's what I'm trying to highlight. You think you're somewhere, you believe it's a ball, but you don't know why you believe it.
Well, I think everybody's taught it's a ball, aren't they?
Told. You're told it's a ball. You ever experienced it as a ball?
No, I can't say so. Well, I've been up in a plane, I can see you know, sometimes you can see the.
You think you're seeing a
the
curve?
arcs of the planet.
There's many top-notch scientists that are involved with NASA that will say at that altitude you don't see a curve.
Right.
So if me and you're at the beach and we see the horizon, you know, that optical thing, that how would you describe it?
Yeah, it's flat.
It's a straight line.
Uh-huh.
Like, so your experience, water's flat, horizon's flat, but you think you live on a bar
Yeah, I still do.
because you were told it and you seen it on the TV.
I just think, I don't know, I still think it is.
You still think
I
it is?
still think it's round.
Because you want to think it's round, or? I'm always trying to reason with people about why they believe the things they believe.
Right.
And I'm a real guy, I'm a mechanic, I take things in what I can demonstrate. You can't demonstrate water behaving the way they claim it behaves.
No.
I've never seen curvature, nobody's ever measured curvature. The only place I see it's on my telly.
Right.
So for me, they're hiding where we actually are.
Right.
And no telling us where we actually are.
Right.
And there could be many reasons for that. I gave you some reasons a minute ago about control. The other possibility is that there's other land, there's other civilisations, there's other resources
Right.
they don't want us to know about. What do you think about that possibility?
Sure, most things are possible, aren't they?
What about you?
I think you're getting told that it's round,
Yeah.
and it's actually not.
Right.
You know, so I think you're getting told this information that it's round,
Yep.
but when you think about it, that's not proven.
So what I'm saying to you is making you think about it. Because what I'm showing people is, look, what you experience for me is the truth. I'm not going to let anybody tell me different from what I actually experience. I don't care what they show me on the TV because I don't trust the TV. If I go out in reality and I see a body of water and I know it's flat, that's reality. So what I'm trying to highlight is this brainwashing that's went on with people where they're gaslighting themselves into doubting your own experience and thinking, well, I don't know because wiser people or smarter people must know better than me. But how? Because they're having the same experience that you're having. So, you know, I think it's massively important that people start to question that, because it's something we're taking for granted. It's back to the analogy of the game board again. If you think you're somewhere and you're just living life based on not really knowing, doesn't make any sense, then your whole life's just a fantasy. It doesn't mean anything. But until you actually know where you are and what the actual game is, then your life would have proper meaning. Does that make sense to you?
It does, aye, what you're saying, aye.
Aye.
But you still go to
Live.
go with your instincts in it, and I still think it's round, but...
So I always try and, you know, press. You're saying instincts. What is your instincts? I mean, if I asked you as a man, right, and you says to me the earth's a ball, how would you convince me?
I would show you it.
Where?
Wherever. I'd be playing at football or whatever. Or the earth's a ball.
The earth's a ball.
Yes,
How would you convince me?
I don't know. It's just... Well, they used to think the earth was flat, didn't they, before?
And the globe earth's quite new, because if you look at all the ancient cosmologies, they all depicted the earth as flat and encased in some type of structure. And then all of a sudden we've got a modern day that tells us we're on a ball. But yet they didn't apparently get to space until the 60s.
The 60s,
And all of a sudden, conveniently, we've got a picture of this round spinning ball earth, which is a cartoon. I don't know if you've all looked at it, but when you get back home, if you type images of earth from space, you'll see that they're cartoons. They're no actual photographs. So you should have a wee look, because all I'm trying to do is just trigger that thought in people and make you think about it. Something that you've never thought about. Aye, so I'll leave you to it, and I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Alright, nice to meet you, much appreciated. Enjoy your day, alright? Thank you very much. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Alright, thank you for taking the time to speak to me, man. What's your name?
Of course, Alfie.
Alfie, I'm Dale. Very pleased to meet you, Alfie. Thanks again for taking the time to speak to me here, bud. I do this quite often. I speak to some students. You're not aware of me, are you?
No.
No.
Not at all.
I usually lead into this topic and ask some, you know, basic questions agreeing some first principles. Do you consider yourself a reasoned person?
Yes.
So you comprehend the things you believe, you know, why you take things to be true?
Yeah.
You think
I
you're quite...
I like to look an argument at all sides. And
all sides? So you're into debating?
yeah.
Do you quite like a debate?
Well, yes and no.
Do you think objectivity, something in the objective world, do you think it's up for debate, or do you think it just is what it is?
No, I think it's definitely up for debate, yes.
Think our interpretations of the objective reality is up for debate, or you know what reality actually is up for debate?
People's opinions of things affect the objective facts of things. The way people perceive things ends up affecting what happens, if that makes sense. So for example, if you had an opinion about something and you were going to act on it,
Yep.
then I might have a different opinion, but you're still going to act on it, and that's going to end up being
Yeah.
sort of the butterfly effect and continue. And
Yeah. So if I extrapolate, so if I use the analogy of objective reality, a newborn child
okay, yeah.
that has no conception of the world, has not formed a rational thought or any of these types of things, it leaves the hospital, you know, on the way home there's a car accident, there's a cause and effect relationship, the child's damaged due to, you know, physical reality. So in that sense there is no debate. Objective reality is what objective reality is. There's cause and effect relations, and there only is what's here regardless of how we look at it or interpret it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, if I pick a rock up and I hit you with a rock, you know fine well there's going to be a cause and effect, they're going to be damaged. There's no a debate for that, is there? So that's my whole premise. You know, I'm a mechanically minded person, and I like practical reference for claims that are made about reality.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So if you make a claim to me about some particular aspect of reality, I expect some practical demonstration or direct measure.
So you're very scientific in that sense. You need you're not someone to believe without the facts in front of you. Is that what
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to, you know, if you told me you went to Mount Everest and you climbed a place called Mount Everest, I don't have to invest a belief in that. I can take what you say and say, okay, this guy told me he's been to a place, but the fact is that I can now travel to that objective, you know, place and experience Mount Everest.
Yeah.
So I don't have to incorporate a belief in any way, shape or form. So as long as it's a practical reference, I can accept that it's true.
Yeah.
Is that fair enough?
That's fair enough, yeah.
You don't have any qualms with that? I mean, it seems quite reasonable, you know. I'm going to bring it into the topic now.
Okay.
And I've got a feeling you're going to have a reaction to this.
Alright.
I deny that the Earth's a globe.
Okay.
And I have my reasons for why I deny the Earth's a globe.
Yeah.
So what I ask people, just a man to man, without invoking fallacious reasoning like appealing to authority or consensus or anything like that, do you accept that the Earth's a globe?
I do, yeah.
Could you then reason with me as another man, without a consensus, without authority, to why you accept that the Earth's a globe and how you would convince me that it's a globe?
Well, just to lay things down, the reason I believe it is because that's what I've been taught.
Yep.
Now, in terms of evidence, the curvature of the Earth and the horizon, I believe there are experiments you can do where if you shoot a laser out, say, this high, directly that way, it's eventually going to collide with something in the sort of natural landscape because of the way the Earth curves. So
if you think a straight out point, but remember the
if you
point...
shot out a straight out point, it will head out and it will collide with something because of the way the...
So you think it's going to go downwards? You remember on a globe Earth, if you're standing on a globe Earth from your reference point, everything goes downwards away from your feet.
Yeah. So can I ask your opinion why you think it's flat?
I've not said anything about it being flat.
Okay.
You've assumed that, but that's a very good thing.
You're right.
That's an excellent point.
You said flat, right? Or
no, I said anything. I said I deny the globe. But this is a really interesting point because when you bring this up to people, there's a propaganda, you know, mechanism that goes, you're immediately this then because I deny that it's a globe. What if I say to you, I don't actually know what it is?
Well, that's fair enough.
And there's an ongoing investigation for me. What I would say from my vantage point, what I can demonstrate to myself is that I know that it's level. So if I can reason with you about level, first and foremost I just want to address the point about the laser. A laser is subject to refraction diffraction, reflection. There's moisture in the atmosphere, and it, you know, varies and alters depending on temperature and distance.
Yeah.
So, you know, a light can be bent upwards, it can be bent downwards, and it's quite inaccurate and inconclusive. Many people have done varying tests, so you get the laser straight across large vast bodies of water where it hits the target. I've seen people with a mirror on the other side of the beach 20 odd miles away, the camera's down at the level of the water and you can see the mirror reflection.
Okay.
So there's inconsistent tests that are being done. For me, a direct measure would be something totally different. That these are evidences, you know, kind of circumstantial, which are inconclusive, which I don't really put too much emphasis on, other than the fact that in certain, you know, occasions you can see a lot further than what would be suggested if you lived on a globe Earth. Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, if they say, you know, the official curve calculator is 8 inches for the first mile, and then after that it squares because it's an exponential curve, it's not a slope, so it squares exponentially. So after 2 miles you square the 8, and then so on for every mile that you go. So I've seen vast distances that I shouldn't be able to see personally. You know, I can go to Largs, I can see Ailsa Rock from Largs, which is 40 miles away. I can see the reflection of the rock on the water beneath it at 40 miles, which it should be hundreds of feet beyond a curve. It shouldn't really be visible apart from a tiny fraction of the rock, which it is. But I'm going to retract, I'm going to go back a wee bit, because we're running forward with the laser thing. I just wanted to address that. So it's my experience, if I say to you, water finds its level, what does that mean to you?
That water will naturally sit at the lowest point it can.
It can. If I was to ask you, if I've got a nice stable standing body of water and I ask you to describe the surface, how do you describe it?
Flat.
That's your experience. That is your experience. I'm just reaffirming.
That is my experience, but that's my experience as a human being at a scale much smaller than what the Earth is.
Yep.
So as a human being on my scale, I experience it as flat.
Yes, and this is what I've heard, this is the rhetoric, and this is what I'm trying to highlight, where there's a disparity between our direct experience and what we're being told through rhetorical means. So you're being told that you're on a globe Earth, but you experience it flat at a local level, but at some unspecified scale apparently there is curvature. But yet people like myself and many other people are seeking to try and find this curvature, and it seems to be very elusive. You know, I've proposed a direct measure. So we know that if the Earth was indeed a ball and water must curve in every direction, if we start from a reference point, which is a plumb, you know what plumb means, I don't mean to be condescending, just so you get a straight vertical point, then if we constructed square from there, perfectly level, using that as a reference point, a straight line, what should happen to the surface of the water is that the gap between the bottom of the structure, it should increase as we construct outwards. But that doesn't happen either. You know, in engineering we use Euclidean principles, so our datum lines are plumbs and levels, and in relative to each other and other engineer on any given project, that's your datum lines, is plumb and level. There is no spherical geometry being accounted for. We're not applying spherical geometry to construction in the actual real world.
No, so again, that's another thing about scale. When it's at such a small scale, in terms of construction, we don't construct things, you know, miles and miles long. Well,
bridges have been built.
We don't need to consider.
What about tunnels?
For most engineering projects you're referring to, you don't need to consider curvature of the Earth. I suppose tunnels and bridges, that's another thing, and I don't want to speculate at all because I don't know anything about the process as they go through that. What's your, if you don't mind me asking, what's your opinion on, you know, pictures we have from space and videos we have from satellites, things like that?
It's a fair question. Again, it comes back to me establishing the grounds of reasoning. Right. So I would, you know, I'm answering your question, but I'm going to return the question just quickly. If I told you that I could fly, okay, and the only way I can show you that I can fly is by showing you through a TV screen, would you accept that I can fly?
No.
Right, because you don't experience it directly. If I could stand here and levitate and fly,
okay,
then you would accept that.
So, so what you're saying is you'd need to believe what's going on up there, what the satellites are taking pictures of, you'd need to be up there next to the satellite, seeing what it's seeing.
Well, again, it's about establishing my point of reasoning. and what I see in my TV is no grounds for accepting things to be true, particularly when they contradict what my experience is.
Okay.
So I don't lend myself to that. The other hand, when I look at these images, I'm not seeing actual photographs. When I go to NASA's website, they're telling me that they're images, they're not photographs. So they're telling you they're images, they even admit it, that they get data, then they use things like, Photoshop, where they put the colour in, they put the textures in, they layer it. You know, these are self-admitted things. It's not a lie. I'm not making. You can verify that for yourself. So they tell you that they're composite images. They're not actual, like me sitting here taking a photograph of reality. And when you now reflect, if you go and look at these images, if you type Earth from space in, now that it's been put in your mind, you might say, all right, I see that that's not an actual photograph. And again, they're going to tell you that. So I think it's interesting. This is why I like these types of chats, because it's seeing the perspectives. You know, I'm coming from a position of, well, I live in reality, so I accept what happens in reality and what's demonstrated, what's measurable in reality.
Yeah.
And then we've got other, you know, evidences or use of so-called evidence where people will refer to things like what they see on their TV. Again, I have to always say to people, that's a two-dimensional representation of an apparent three-dimensional object. So if I'm seeing it in 2 dimensions, it's not an actual photograph. How do I reason my way to accept that? What I would say is I have to invest a certain amount of faith and belief, which I'm not prepared to do.
I suppose things with satellites and even the International Space Station,
yep,
they have it where you can look through a telescope,
yep,
and on a night sky with no artificial lighting around
you see something going by, yeah,
and
at 17,500 miles an hour.
So for you, seeing something up there, would you just think, I don't know what I'm looking at, that might be anything?
Exactly. Because again, I'm trying to be real. I'm not trying to be like, I don't have a bias. This is the thing I try and express to people. I'm trying to be as honest and brutally honest with myself. I can see a light up there, I could maybe see a light going past, but then I've got to go to a TV screen that tells me this is what this thing is, there's people on here and they're in this reference frame.
Yeah.
That's another leap for me. Like I'm seeing the image, but then I have to have this leap of faith to accept that what they're saying about that is what's actually going on, because it's not in my experience. And I think, to be honest with you, I think I'm pretty fair at that in that regard. I don't think it's a, you know, an illogical point of view, or, you know, an irrational point of view, or an outlandish point of view. I think I had to have doubt and scepticism is quite healthy.
No, I think it's good to be sort of based in reality and things you experience.
Yeah.
But then again, that poses the question: are you correct yourself?
Yep.
You know.
Of course.
You've got to sort of think. You don't believe it, but are you right not to believe it?
Yeah.
But again, that can just go on forever, because someone else can say something to you, but should you believe them? Which
is why I try and establish direct experience, direct measure, practical reference, because there is no debate there is no doubt. So if somebody tells me there's a curve rate of a standing body of water of such and such, then I expect that we should be able to build a scientific construct to directly measure that that is indeed the case.
Yeah.
But we don't have anything like that, which again, regardless of what MD wants to believe, for me it would be a very feasible and worthwhile project. If you know, if there was ever doubt in the human race and we built a construct with a direct measure of the curve of the Earth, then there can never be any doubt, and this whole debacle would go away. But we don't have anything like that. It's all inferences and, you know, second-hand information. The majority of people I speak to,
you know, the human mind is so limited that sometimes you have to take inferences from things, because otherwise you'll be stuck wondering, God knows how anything happens.
Yeah.
How anything happens.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, I don't know the process of creating cheese.
Yep.
For example,
yep.
I could watch a video where someone tells me exactly how they create cheese, and in my opinion, I would just accept that. I wouldn't go down to the dairy.
But you could.
Go down to the farm. I could.
That's the difference. Can you and I go to space?
But again, that's about scale. You know, just because we are too small to go up to space and see all this stuff. This is my opinion, but I believe that there are people who have gone up there in a rocket, they're in the International Space Station,
Yep.
and they're seeing the world as a globe. But I'm just taking that, in my opinion, as I'm inferencing that yeah,
It's belief, it's faith.
it is.
But,
Yeah.
but that's perfectly fine. All I'm ever looking for, and I applaud and I really appreciate, is honesty. Because I think that's always the root of things. If people can just be honest about their position, it's fair enough. I totally accept. You know, it's faith, it's belief, absolutely fine. As long as we agree and we know that that's what it is, I don't have a problem with anybody. It's when people try and defend a faith and belief staunchly when they don't actually have the grounds for
That
that,
evidence. Yeah.
you know,
That
which
makes sense, yeah.
which is fair enough.
Yeah.
Um,
For example, like if you went to like the NASA headquarters, the Houston
Yep.
Space Center or something, you went there
Yep.
and you spoke with scientists, and they could give you empirical data as to the reasoning behind why the Earth's curved and
yeah.
how they got the space station up there and everything. After listening to all that, would you believe it, or would you only believe it until you yourself were up there and experienced it?
Well, when we look at data, there's different branches of science. So when we look at like science, people say science continually. There's subdivisions in different categories of science. So we have formal sciences, we have the natural sciences, and we have the social sciences. So in the formal sciences we have language, logic, rhetoric, mathematics. In the natural sciences we have chemistry, physics, biology. Okay, so in the natural sciences we deal with objective reality, with practical reference, direct measure. That's what physics, chemistry and biology deals with. Mathematics deals with interpretations, axioms, you know, making assumptions, deriving formulas, equations, trying to explain what they claim is natural phenomena. So, you know, when we talk about data, it depends what you mean. You know, we would have to analyse what that data actually is. What's it rooted in is always my point. You know, if somebody gives me mathematical equations or data, I have to say, well, what's your axiomatic assumptions? What are these rooted in? You know, we have applied mathematics and use of engineering, construction, these types of things, and it's a very useful language because it's ascribed to provable integers. So it's attached to physicality, three-dimensional objects, form, shape, volume, you know, length, width, you know, these types of things. So for that purpose it's very, very useful. But mathematics again can make assumptions, you know, formulate axioms and construct an image, explanations of things that are in no way shape related to physical reality.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. Eratosthenes, you ever heard of Eratosthenes? Apparently proved the circumference of the Earth, the distance to the Sun, by using two sticks and shadows.
Right.
You ever heard this? So in Alexandria there was a stick, and then in Syene there was another stick which they say was 500 miles apart. This is just a story as far as I'm concerned. So then, because there was no shadow at the stick at Alexandria and there was a shadow on the stick in Syene 500 miles away, he's then formulated from an assumption that the Earth's round. He's then, you know, gave the Sun a set distance and worked out a formula for where the Sun would be in relation to the other stick, given it its length of shadow. And from there derived a circumference of a globular Earth, which is a postulation. Now again, I can take the very same observation, just like right now, if we placed a stick here and we took a stick and we placed it over there, we're going to get two varying shadows. Did we prove that the ground's curved? If I make the assumption that the Sun's closer and more local, and it's the Sun that's actually moving over the top of us, then at high noon there's going to be no shadow over the stick, but the stick that's further away is going to be casting a shadow. But what I can do is I can play with the variables. I can bring the Sun closer, I can move it away, I can work out my distances, I can derive a mathematical formula to explain the observation. But my mathematical explanation does not you know, accurately describe what's actually going on, nor does it define actually what's going on. Does that make sense to you?
No, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
So when we use data, we have to break apart what we're talking about and see where it's ascribed.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I understand that.
Like if I say to you, my rule of thumb for construction is to construct on a level. Now my axiom for that is that I utilise water. Water for me finds its level and gives me a nice straight horizontal line, which I can prove to you and I can demonstrate to you. That's my axiom, and then I construct from there. So my axiom is rooted in an objective, tangible you know, representation. Whereas the globe Earth tries to redefine level to be equal distance from a point in a circle, because they show you two-dimensionally. So from the point at the centre of the circle to the outer circumference, you can draw a straight line, a radius, and they'll say that that distance is equal all the way around the circumference. So they now define that as meaning level. So level is a curve in a globe Earth.
Right.
But in reality, to us in the practical world, level is a straight line. So that's what I'm saying about the use of mathematics, the use of language. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Yeah.
Yep. So I kind of lost where we were going there. I'll let you, I mean, if you get any questions, you get any thoughts?
I guess, what is your skepticism, well, maybe not skepticism is the right word, but what has made you question the globe Earth?
The realisation came to me because I was searching through my whole life. You know, I went into religion, I went into philosophy, I went into science. Life never made sense to me. I never had a great start in life. So I always had this, you know, underlying niggling question: what's going on here, what's going on? And what I realised is that humanity as a race are living a delusion, because we're constructing cultures, we're just constructing ways of living, we're formulating what I would call ideas of who we are and how we live. Does that make sense to you? Because we don't have the objective truth of our existence. So we can't live a life.
Create order out of something that out of nothing, really.
Yeah, exactly.
But is that a bad thing?
Well, that's my, no, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. The realisation came for me that we're living lives that are ideas. It's like, that's a good idea. You and I were born into a particular idea, a certain culture. You're told who you are. This is the structure of your life. You go to school, you be this, you go to achieve this. This is success, this is no success, this is wrong, this is right, blah blah blah. Now when I looked at these things, I go, what's that rooted in? Is there an objective point of reference for these statements? And what you find is, no, there's no, because we don't have the answer to why we're alive, what life is, where we actually are, how it came to be. None of that's been established. So when I had that realisation, I'm like, the weight of the world left, because now there's no pressure on me of expectation of who I'm supposed to be. And from there it just naturally led into, well, if I've taken these things to be assumptions and for granted, what else have I taken for granted? And then I arrive at the conclusion, well, I've taken for granted that I'm on a spinning space rock in an infinite vacuum. That actually makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I started to analyse it from there, came to the conclusion that I could no longer maintain that belief, because I did, like you, for 30 odd years of my life, just assumed and took it for granted that that was the case. But when I applied scepticism and a bit of honesty to it, without a bias, because it didn't matter to me whether it was a globe or it wasn't, but I wanted to make sure, and from there I could no longer satisfy myself that it was. And that's where I'm at right now. So from that...
Do you not think there's like a sort of blissful ignorance in not having to... You know,
I've toiled with myself about this so many times, honestly.
You know, because we all are part of a big system. We are little cogs in a big machine.
Yeah.
That, you know, establishes order.
Or tries to.
Or our
idea of order.
Our idea of order.
Yeah.
And, you know, yes, I completely get where you're coming from. But like, what's the alternative? And we don't know, but we also...
Well,
we don't know that we're... that is a good thinking point. Yeah.
Yes.
Because you don't know whether we're living in the right system, whether we're living in the best system, and I don't think we are living in the best system.
No chance.
Far from it, but... You know...
But as long as we realise that it's an idea, it relieves a bit of pressure. Because
you see, I got to disagree with that. I think it creates more pressure.
Well, as I say, I was going to say, I've toiled, I've been back and forward with this, and I've been at points where I'm like, you know what, I see people and I go, why can I not just be invested in the idea? Why can I not just be enveloped in the idea and have my attention there and be pursuing my own goals, my own desires, you know, I've toiled with that. And again, in a bigger picture, I think to myself sometimes, maybe it requires us to be in that state, because do we really want to know the full truth of our existence, and what are we actually going to do with that? You know, so I've been there, you know, and I say that to people, look, this is for me is not about establishing the total entirety of our existence, because that's quite scary. I don't want that, you know, but I still want to be grounded in knowing exactly where I am. And it intrigues me, because here's another point to add to it, because it intrigues me that there may be other land, there may be other life, but it's no up in outer space, it's across the way. There could be other ponds like yours with other systems of a sun, a moon, you know, ways of life. And there's been books written about this, there's been, you know, people have stated this through the ages.
So you think on the same Earth?
Well,
if you kept going?
If you imagine that you imagine you imagine a massive ice sheet, right? Like, I'm talking millions of miles, just for say, just as a possibility, and we're in a melted circular pond, right? And that's where our sun system is, whatever the sun is, and this is where we live. But if you leave there and you go south or north or any of these directions where there's restricted measures that you and I can't freely explore, there may be access points to other areas that have a melted pond with a sun system, that there's another civilization who don't even know we exist.
Okay.
That may not look like us, they may look like us. You know, there may be a pond where it's only white people, there may be a pond where it's only black people, you know, there's an endless, but there may be other life, like people think about aliens. These things might be across the pond, and we just don't know. There could be other land masses that we don't even know about, because we're being kept within a certain circle and told this is where we are, that's been depicted to us as a three-dimensional ball. But the possibilities for me are endless. I'll give you another example of why I doubt the space thing. And it's based again in reality. Physics shows me that if I have a pressurised container and I have a vacuum, and I put the two systems next to each other and I remove the barrier, the solid separation between the two of them, what happens is that the higher pressure system immediately equilibrates with the lower pressure system. In physics, it's well known that high pressure moves to low pressure and fills the void, right? And you have to have a solid membrane between the two, which is why we have, you know, containers of higher pressure separating that higher pressure from our ambient pressure. But they're telling you that the Earth's in an infinite vacuum, and we're this tiny speck of dust, but it maintains a gaseous environment with no solid separation between us and the vacuum of space. Again, can you physically demonstrate that to me, to help me to see how that's a possibility? Or do we have to specially plead again and invoke, oh, it's at a big scale and scientists have told us, you know, that's just like me going to religion and saying, oh well, the priests know, so go and speak.
Yeah, but you know, people spend their lives in fields researching this stuff.
Yep.
And I don't think, I completely get where you're coming from, but if I wanted that level of understanding for everything in order to believe something, it would just, it's not possible.
No.
Physically possible.
No.
And you know,
which is why I try and relate to people at an experiential level.
Because again, like you're saying about that vacuum thing, then you know, in terms of a globe, I could talk about like the Coriolis effect, the way storms are generated by the rotation of the Earth, and you know, how it's particularly warmer in the centre, and
yep.
You know, there are so many different ways of thinking about something. So that's why I think, I mean, I'm gonna have to go in a minute.
That's all right. I was just going to say that.
I think, just in kind of like a summary, like it is perfectly reasonable the way you're thinking.
Yep.
But I think personally for myself, thinking that skeptically about everything, especially something as, like, you know, fundamental as, like, in my opinion, as the Earth being a globe,
yeah.
it's too scary to think about.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Trying to open up my mind to.
Fair enough.
Have to experience everything in order to believe it.
Yeah. But that's why, you know, when I talk about this subject, I try and relate to people at an experiential level, because that way we don't need to invoke you know, authorities. It's just about us at the experiential level and what we share with each other.
Yeah.
You know, if I look there and I see that and I say, do you see that? You know, we're sharing that experience. And I think that's the most valuable thing.
I mean, to be honest, I might have, in my opinion, I might have sat here and said a whole load of nothing for however long I've been
No,
talking,
it's been absolutely brilliant.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's something you don't get questioned a lot.
So do you think it's a positive experience, this,
Yeah, of
that
course.
we've just had?
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. That's what I think. That's the value in it.
I think debate and just talking about things, it opens your mind to different points of view that you might not have considered before. You know?
But this is the best format for me. See this formal debate.
Yeah.
Like, we're having a discussion. You and I as two human beings.
Yeah.
There's no aggravation. You know, you don't.
Well, there's no need for it. No.
Exactly. Because we're human beings, and first and foremost, regardless of the shape of the earth, if you were in need or you're in a situation, I'm going to jump to alleviate that stress or that suffering from you. And I think if we focus on that first and foremost, we would be a lot better off.
Yeah.
You know, and establishing relationships where we can just have a chat.
Yeah,
you know,
good. Yeah.
absolutely fantastic, buddy.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. It's
Yeah,
a really valuable interaction. Can't thank you enough, my man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you.